I used to be a teacher in a public school. I was a band director, and if only they'd have gotten that quiet when I stood on the podium, it would have been a lot easier. We want to welcome every one of you this evening to this special civic event of Meet the Candidates. This is our third time to host this. We're very honored that we can provide a venue for this to be done. And I am Pastor Barney Carball. I'm the senior pastor here, and I want to thank each and every one of you for your attendance and for your interest in the upcoming Rio Communities City Election 2021. I can honestly say that it's very encouraging to see every one of you here present tonight, and it's your interest, it's your participation, it's also your vote that plays a crucial role in the development and the enhancement of the city of Rio Communities. I would ask you now to please stand for the singing of our national anthem, followed by our reciting of the Pledge of Allegiance. Lady by the name of Leah, if you would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty, and justice for all.
You all may be seated. Thank you. We are very, very pleased and excited to have the candidates with us this evening, candidates for City Council, and we have our mayor who is running for re-election. He is unopposed. We thank him for being here as well. And let me just introduce to you the candidates, if you don't know who they are. And I have them just here. I don't have them in the order that you're sitting here, so I'm just going to call your name out, and if you'll put your hand up, and people get an idea of who you are if they haven't already met you. Mayor Joshua Ramsell. Candidate Richard Henderson. Candidate Lawrence Gordon. Candidate John Thompson. And candidate Art Apodaca. Our community is very blessed to have people that take such an interest and are willing to serve in this manner. It's a great responsibility, and I know that every one of these men sitting up here knows that without a shadow of a doubt. Let me just give you an idea of how we're going to conduct this evening. We want to keep it rolling and so we can use the time just as wisely and efficiently as we possibly can. This forum should take probably approximately, we're saying 90 minutes. We do ask that you refrain from any applause or comments during the forum. Questions to the candidates by this evening's moderators are based on a compiled and submitted list sent to us via email by citizens of Rio Communities. Questions will be asked on a rotating basis, with the first candidate to speak having been determined by the draw of a hat done by the candidates themselves. The questions have not been disclosed to the candidates as of this very moment, and therefore the candidates' answers will be spontaneous and not prepared beforehand. Each candidate will have a maximum of 2 minutes to respond to each question. Our timekeeper will give a 10-second notice of time left to the candidates when answering a question. And when the candidate's time is up, you will hear the following sound. How sweet the sound. I play golf with this gentleman, and we're going to try and be sane for at least 90 minutes, okay? He's on my team. The first 4 questions will be asked by this evening's moderators. I'm one of them, and Jessica Corral has just been a real blessing to moderator here. And then we'll have questions by you that are here in attendance. I want to make just a quick announcement regarding that. We've done this for the 3 years, and last year we did it by means questions coming from you all were done on a card. They were submitted. The cards were submitted. We have had very positive response, but we're always open to any ideas and improvements or ways that we can better serve you coming in here, because this election is not only about the candidates, it's about you. You're the ones that are going to make the decisions. You're the ones that are going to vote. And so you may have questions that we don't have. So this evening, when we finish our questions here, we have made an allotment for anyone who would like to ask a question to come right up to this microphone here. Let me just do this so I can save a little bit of time so you understand. None of this moves up and down, but you can move this like this. And if you need to bend down to speak, or if you need to put it down and look up and speak, these microphones are pretty sensitive. So feel free to do that. We would ask, and I will maybe elaborate a little bit more on this when you come up, please. Your questions, I understand some questions may take some kind of preface to ask, but please limit that. Okay, we don't want somebody giving a minute and a half open to their question, because we want to give time to everyone here that would like to ask a question to ask that question, and also for the candidates to respond. So with all of that said, we are ready to begin this evening, and we are going to begin with the first question by Jessica Corral to candidate Richard Henderson.
Mr. Henderson, what steps would you implement to combat the recent crime increase within Rio Communities?
My main thing that I see here in Rio Communities is we have a lot of vacant buildings from the time that you drive into the city. If you do some studies on it, vacant buildings actually breed crime. So if we can get these cleaned up, areas in the city, I believe that would stop some of the. By talking to people, I know that there's a lot of people that live here in the communities, and they don't know who their neighbors are, and that's a big issue also. You don't really have to like your neighbor, but if you get to know them, and you know that when they're not home, if a strange car pulls up or people start coming out loading up furniture, to go ahead and make that 911 call. So I would like to try to do something to get the community together and stand as one instead of apart.
Excellent. And Mr. Thompson, the same question for you.
Yes, this is something that I feel really passionate about. In every community where I've lived in the past, I've focused on crime prevention and law enforcement. When I lived in the Lemon Grove area of East San Diego County, I worked with the San Diego Sheriffs, and we had a program called COPS, C-O-P-S, Community-Oriented Policing and Problem Solving. It is something that's administered at the federal level, the Department of Justice. It's, as far as I know, they've got about $8 billion, so it's administered by Merrick Garland. I don't know how active he is doing that, but it brings the law enforcement together with the community. In different cities, that has different looks. In our area, this is the La Presa area, we had, now I was involved with Kiwanis at the time, so we ended up having a lot of Kiwanis people involved with cops. And we found that 80% of all the calls were non-emergency. So we ended up with COPS people, the Kiwanians. I say that in general.
Excuse me. Can you bring the mics right up to your mouth.
How
Otherwise,
about that?
All of you. If you can pull them up to your mouth and speak right into them, because they tend to cut out. Thank you.
Okay, so the way the COPS program worked was people from the community were trained, not every, select people were trained to take the police reports for things like stolen bicycles, stolen patio furniture, et cetera. And that was 80% of the police work that was done. So that freed up our law enforcement officers to actually go out and solve crime. Also, when I lived in the San Diego area, I was really big on neighborhood watch, really big. We had huge neighborhood watch programs. I've got copies, newspaper articles, and so forth of what we did with graffiti cleanouts. And then I won a Channel 10 Leadership Award in San Diego for reducing crime in our neighborhood to zero. Zero.
What I would do with this, to help with this crime spree, I would ask our neighbors to help. We all live here together. We put on our lights at night. We monitor each other. Those who have security cameras, you see something, let your neighbor know. Call them, let them know. We have to work together to make this town better. And doing it will take effort from everyone.
And Mr. Apodaca, the same question for you.
Thank you. I'd also agree with what Lawrence just said. This is our community collectively, and city government can't do it all, and police can't do it all. So collectively, we need to all be a part of the crime-solving issue that we have. It's a big issue. When I was out campaigning and knocking on doors, it seemed to be the #1 issue in our city. Crime is #1. Everyone wants to know, what are you going to do about it? And as Lawrence said, light up the neighborhood. Turn your porch light on. Turn your back porch light on. Get cameras. If you see a crime, report it. But collectively, we need to do it because law enforcement can't do it alone. And then it becomes a bigger issue because we are in a dire need and shortage of police officers right now throughout the state. State police is down over 2,000 officers, 200 officers right now. I know the village of Los Lunas is struggling with the lowest number of police officers they've had in years. And even if we had the money right now to have our own police department, we'd be hard pressed to go out and find police officers to hire. So it's a real dilemma. And in the meantime, until we have more police officers out there willing to take on that job, we are going to have to come together as a community to solve that problem. It's going to take all of us.
And Mr. Mayor, it's your turn.
First, I just want to say thank you for hosting this event. So as far as crime, one of the big things we've talked about is lighting. As you've heard already, for our neighbors to turn on their lights at night, the porch lights. We've talked about that many times, and one of the big issues has been a lot of people just don't want to turn on their lights. So we still encourage people, please turn on your lights. As far as a city, we're going to be adding more lighting down highways and then moving into the residential areas to provide more lighting because it's a safety issue for our emergency responders, also for folks driving at night, kids at school buses stops in the morning, walkers, joggers, that type of thing. Community cleanup's a really big one. We've all probably heard of the broken window theory. So, if you have a clean community, that makes a big difference. It helps reduce crime. You can't stop crime completely, but anything we can do to cut down on the amount of crime is a big way to go. The other thing we started is having monthly business meetings with our businesses locally to talk about crime issues. And, we're going to be having our second meeting here this next coming week. We're real excited to talk about, the issues that have come up. And we're also working with the Sheriff's Department. We're reaching out to state police, anything we can do to find more resources for our community. But it's already been previously stated, all law enforcement agencies in the state and in the county are short, unfortunately.
Thank you.
Candidate Thompson, how would you propose to bring new businesses to Rio Communities?
That's actually a two-step process. Businesses aren't going to locate here unless the business owner the investor, the entrepreneur, the one who's taking the risk, sees a potential for reward and payback. And the biggest measurement of that is foot traffic and vehicle traffic. Now, I used to own dry cleaners in San Diego. I had 5 locations, and something that was really important to me was traffic count. I paid attention to that. So what we have to do here is increase our traffic count. That means we got to build more houses. So we need to talk to developers and turn some of this dry arid land into rooftops, and then entice businesses into our community.
Mr. Gordon, I pose the same question to you. How would you propose to bring new businesses to Rio Communities?
Well, we first make sure that we keep our streets and town clean. People want to see that there's something positive going on and that people in the town care. And we go out there and we go out and advertise Rio Communities. We just hired a new person to help with economic development, a consultant. We help him get the new businesses in. The landowners, we talk to them and see if they want to sell or reuse the land that we have to bring the businesses in. All that together, we can bring more business into town.
Thank you.
Mr. Apodaca?
Yes. First of all, I believe that we're well positioned for growth in the near future. I also believe that the growth is going to come whether we want it or not. So I think that as a city, we would be very smart to plan and be proactive to make sure that when the growth comes, it's the type of growth that we want. I moved to Los Angeles, California, the Long Beach area, when I was a young man, 21 years old, from Las Cruces, New Mexico. So I went from a small little podunk town to the metroplex of LA. And at that time, LA was still growing. And I saw the growth take place. I saw homes take the place of orange orchards, lemon groves, and agricultural areas that produced groceries. And it all became just a sea of houses and businesses. And with that, came all the problems of a city, crime, et cetera. What I'm saying is that we live in Valencia County, and we've seen what has happened and transpired in Los Lunas. I believe that they did a lot of good things there. They planned for the growth. They have limitations with one exit off the interstate, but look how Los Lunas has exploded. The same thing is going to happen here whether we want it or not, because the growth is coming. So we want to just make sure we attract the right kind of businesses, the right kind of developers to come in and make sure that our city is the city that we want, that we keep the city that we have. Let's not let other businesses and developers dictate to us what kind of city we're going to have. Let's hang on to what we have. Just make it better.
Mayor Ramsell?
Yes, thank you. As far as getting new businesses into Rio Communities, as you've heard, the city did hire for professional services. This is specifically for economic recruiting, for reaching out to investors, developers, businesses, anyone who's looking to open a new business or invest into, maybe a retail complex or something like that. Reaching out to those individuals, because we are open as a community. Almost the entire city is an economic opportunity zone. So we're very blessed with that. That helps with tax incentives for businesses. The other thing to think about is we have 3 state highways that run through our community. So, we don't have the interstate, but we do have 3 state highways that run north, south, and then, west, east, and then 304 running kind of parallel to 47. The big thing to think about is we have an industrial park just outside the city. So this opens us up to larger ideas besides just food and retail. So we continue to work with those partners to see what we can do to possibly see if they would be interested in being part of the city.
Mr. Henderson?
I've been asked this question before, and the only way that I can answer it is that we have to get the landowners that own the majority of the properties around us to release some of the land, some of the properties that they own, in order for us to bring some of these investors in these properties. So I know they don't want to spend $800,000 for an acre if that's what they're asking. I'm not sure. I haven't really talked to any in a long time. But, our land isn't really worth that type of money that they're asking for. So, I know that we were at one time due a hospital over here. I know some of that's a holdout. It hasn't happened yet. Could it? It's a possibility. If that does happen, then I think that we're going to see the city grow immensely. Housing is a big issue. We don't have any here. If you go down the street, you see a sign go up, it sells pretty quick, even if it needs a lot of work. So I'm hoping that in the future we can get with our landowners, have them release some of that property at reasonable rates so we can bring in some new businesses.
Thank you, gentlemen. Mr. Gordon, what in your opinion could be done to improve roads and other infrastructure within Rio Communities?
Well, we have a limited budget for repairing our land, our streets. We have 34 miles worth of roadway here, and every year we can only fix about 10% with our budget. So what the city does is they do chip and seal. For the areas that aren't bad, you fix it, you pave it over, and it'll hold us for 5 to 7 years. While the potholes in the more serious areas, you get on that immediately. We're trying to do a catch-up. We've been behind, and we're just trying to catch up. The more businesses and stuff we bring in, the more money we have, the quicker we can catch up on all of it. But it's a slow process, and we just have to keep on pushing along until we get there.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Apodaca?
I would have to agree. I think Mr. Gordon laid that out pretty well. The only thing that I would add to that is that we have to look for every possible source of revenue to repair our streets. It is limited right now. Are there other monies available? Can we explore those other avenues, see if we can access some more revenue to maybe address the street issue quicker and better? But resources are limited, and our want list is long, from law enforcement to streets to parks and rec, and our revenues are limited. So in the meantime, we have to do the best we can. But I think if we can just look for any and all options out there to raise some more revenue to address the street issue, that would be my direction, I guess.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. Mr. Ramsdell?
So when it comes to roads, we're looking at 30 to 40-year-old infrastructure. In some places, it's older than that. Just as been said, we are playing a catch-up game. Biggest problem we have is roads currently costing anywhere between $8 to $12 per square foot, depending on the price of oil, labor, and everything that goes with it. We've been very fortunate with NMDOT grants to do cut and replace, chip and seal where possible. Unfortunately, it's kind of a losing battle. There are federal funds available. Unfortunately, we only have one main arterial route that's going to run through our city that would be able to use those federal funds. There are some issues as far as right-of-ways and landowners property owners being willing to sign away a certain portion of their property for sidewalks and such. But one possibility that we could use is possibly bonding for the main roads in town, and that would get all of our main streets taken care of. That would be a long-term effect. The thing that you'd have to think about after that is going to be how are we going to fund the smaller streets, cul-de-sacs or short streets, things of that nature.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Henderson?
Chip and seal. To me, it's a total waste of money. If you don't go out and you put tar in the cracks where moisture will get in, we don't have a lot of that, but sometimes we do, that erodes the blacktop. So instead of chip and seal, wasting the money on doing that, if all we do is repair the cracks with tar, that will save a lot of the issues that we have. I see chip and seal as spray paint on your road. I've been sweeping that stuff up out of the road ever since the first time they did it over on Hillendale. All it does is come apart. It causes problems in your driveway. It comes in your house. It's just, to me, I don't know how much it costs to do the whole road or per mile, square foot, or whatever it is. I just see it as a total waste of money. I would rather see them come with the tar truck, seal those cracks just like they do everywhere else in the nation, and we can actually do the roads correctly.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Thompson?
For 6 years, I taught night school. I taught college-level economics. Briefly, economics is a study of the allocation of scarce resources. We're a city that has scarce resources. So in a nutshell, we got two choices. We either increase our income or decrease our expenditures somewhere else. So I sure don't want to see taxes raised, and I don't know what else we can cut. So here's what I propose. This is going to sound obtuse. I have a daughter with autism, and I am her biggest advocate. So I have taken a lot of classes in autism, autism awareness, and being an advocate for autism. And as such, I've learned, actually had formal classes in being an advocate at the state legislature. So I have been to the Roundhouse many times, and actually not alone, but with a lot of other advocates, and we've had success at passing disability legislation. So I know how to do that. So my promise to you is you'll find me in the Roundhouse as your professional beggar asking for money so we don't have to or cut other expenses. That's the money that I want to see used on law enforcement and potholes.
Yes, Mr. Apodaca, what do you consider to be your greatest asset or assets to the continued development of Rio Communities?
I would say that I've had a very fortunate opportunity to work for corporate America my entire career, and the last 40 years specifically in marketing and sales. And I retired from General Mills Food Service Division after 20 years in the national account sales arena. And what that taught me was, first of all, I've got extensive experience in calling on upper-level management, from presidents to vice presidents and directors of major corporations. I think that is valuable experience when we're talking about business development in our community. I'd like to say that I can close the deal. I can negotiate. I can come to compromise, consensus, and I think that's a strength of mine. So that's what I feel I bring to the city, specifically in that sales and marketing development to bring new business in and to close the deal. I think that I have other talents as well that I can bring to the table, but that would be the one that I think would be most valuable immediately to see our city move forward.
Thank you, sir. Mayor Ramsell, what do you consider to be your greatest assets to the continued development of Rio Communities?
So for me, growing up in this community, seeing how things have changed over the years, seeing how things were, and seeing what they can be, I think that's a big game changer. Having a business degree, working in a business, managing, sales, assets, trying to reduce our losses, recoup anything that we can, going to municipal league training, finding out how state government works. It's quite an experience once you learn everything, how it works, and then once you figure it out, they change it up again somewhere along the way. You have to be willing to listen to everyone's point of view, sit there and see what they have to say, and actually take it under consideration, not just blow it off in your head. You have to actually sit there and think, how are they coming to this point of view? You have to be willing not to make rush decisions or rash decisions or knee-jerk decisions. You have to sit there and think, what is the best course of action for this community? We have to worry about our elderly, our kids, our families, our neighbors. These decisions are going to be affecting everyone. People that aren't even here, people that aren't even born yet. We have to consider those decisions we make and make them wisely.
Mr. Henderson, what do you consider to be your greatest asset or assets to the continued development of Rio Communities?
I'm proactive. I'm not a politician. I've lived here for over 20-something years. I have seen the changes from even when we became a city. I'm up here because I'm not going to complain anymore. I'm up here to try to see things in a different light to fix them. I'm not here for myself. I'm here for the 5,100 people that live here. So those are the voices that I'm going to listen to. So until they can be heard, I don't think that they really have a voice in the city. So that is what I want to bring. I want to bring the voices of the people that live here into City Hall so that we can all be on the same page when it comes to matters. Then nobody can really have a complaint if they have a voice.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Thompson, same question. What do you consider to be your greatest asset or assets to the continued development of Rio Communities?
I think that my strength actually is in my generalist background. I graduated from the University of New Mexico, went into the Marine Corps, was a communications officer, then became an intelligence officer. Then I went into counterintelligence, specializing in counterterrorism, and then became an operations officer for a tank battalion. So along the way, at a different point, I owned 5 dry cleaners in San Diego, as I mentioned. So I met the payroll of 28 employees every 2 weeks. I taught macroeconomics at college, and for 15 years, I was an investment representative with Edward Jones Investments. So I've had a broad range of problem-solving situations. One point in the Marine Corps, I was selected to be the general's aide. So I followed the general around and watched how decisions were made at that level. So I didn't participate in the decisions. I was the one with the notebook, but I was able to observe how decisions are made. As a company commander, I had a command of 300 Marines that I was responsible for, and I had NJP, non-judicial authority, non-judicial punishment of Article 15, administrative law judge, essentially. So because I've had a broad range of problem-solving situations, I think that those experiences have well prepared me to handle whatever may come up in Rio Communities.
Thank you. Mr. Gordon, what do you consider to be your greatest asset or assets to the development of Rio Communities?
Well, I've been a civil servant for most of my life, from being in the Boy Scouts, being a Scoutmaster, getting to the older kids, being an Explorer Postmaster, to I became a police officer, did that for 26 years. I was in charge of the PAL Police Athletic League daycare. I was the president. So with all this, I've been doing problem solving my whole life. So any problems that we have, we can work together and figure out a solution. And that's what we need to do, solutions.
Thank you, sir. This concludes our question and answer time. Now is, wow, to see all of you here. Thank you for coming. This is a great turnout, especially with the notice that you were given. This is your time now, because this meeting is not only for the candidates to present themselves, but it is also your meeting to present the questions to the candidates of things that are of interest to you, and of which I'm sure every one of these candidates would like to hear. So if you have any questions, and I hope there's somebody here that has some questions, I'm sure there is, please feel free to, if you would step up to this microphone right now, and it won't bite, I promise you, and you can ask your question to the candidates. Anybody here this evening? Thank you, sir.
My name is Chip Up the Graph. I live on Rio Communities Way. I attended some meetings when I first moved here about 4 years ago and complained about the speeds that are attained on Rio Communities Way. After going to numerous meetings, they gave us a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit sign, which does nothing for the 3 school buses that stop on that road. The people that try to set land speed records coming from Highway 304 to 47 and vice versa. How do you feel about putting 2 speed bumps there, since we have limited law enforcement, and maybe they'll tear their cars up and save children's life?
Candidates who would like to be first.
I'd happily take that. When I lived in San Diego, I was appointed to a traffic commission. And so I have, what I know is that we can use speed bumps, rumble strips, traffic circle, which wouldn't be appropriate in front of your house. And another thing that sometimes is effective is a radar gun with a flashing sign, just as a reminder. I would love to examine and see which of those would best be suited for your location. My initial gut feeling is that the rumble bumps would be most effective, reminding people to slow down. That, and combined with a aggressive police officer that starts writing tickets. And once that work gets out, comply.
Mr. Gordon?
You are absolutely right. 2 speed bumps would take care of the job. You have one right before Frederico, one right after Lee Trevino, and that would stop all the traffic. They would not be able to fly through there. You are absolutely right.
Mr. Apodaca?
I have the same desire. We have speeders in front of our house. We've talked numerous times that we wanted to approach city council to see if we could get 1 or 2 speed bumps on January. But I think it's an issue that's throughout our city. And we do need to control speeders, and especially when you talk about kids getting off the school bus. Last thing in the world we want is an accident where a child is run over. So, and I think it's an inexpensive proposition. I don't think it's going to cost an arm and a leg to put some speed bumps out there throughout the city. So I think it's something we ought to look at right away and see where we can find the funding to get some speed bumps out there.
Mayor?
So we actually have 3 issues with speed bumps. One is going to be, if you're going with a hard asphalt structure, it's going to be very costly, and it's going to damage the road on either side from the impact of cars hitting the road immediately afterwards. You also have to consider that where speed bumps are already in place within the city, people actually petition for those speed bumps. They're actually pretty willing to say it's probably one of the worst things they actually asked for. People speed up to hit those speed bumps, fly over them, see how fast they can go. There are other options. Rumble strips, I personally know people will avoid those without even leaving the lane. So one of the things that we can consider is possibly a removable speed bump, such as like a plastic poly ABS bump, something that you can't fly over. There are other technologies out there that we just unfortunately do not have currently the ability to fund. But there's other things that we could look at. We look at what's happening in Albuquerque right now with speed vans. They're looking at making that from a criminal thing to a civil. You get a speeding ticket in the mail instead of having a police officer pull you over. Now, of course, that comes with controversy, but there are options out there. But for right now, it's something we could definitely look at. Temporary speed bump that can be moved. So if we can get speeding under control, we can move it around, or if it needs to be permanent, leave it permanent.
Anyone else? Mr. Henderson?
I kind of agree with the mayor. It might sound strange, but I do. That was a joke. The speeding throughout the whole city is a big one issue. I call it Highway Hillendale. I have the same issues that everybody else does in the city. I have people drag racing up and down the street. You call the police, they say, "Who was it?" I don't know. They're doing 90 miles an hour. My eyes aren't that great anymore. I have to see things a little bit closer nowadays, and 90 miles an hour going, you don't really get to see it. I've been asking for speed bumps for years. Same thing, you drive down other streets and you see speed bumps. The condition that the roads are in, I really don't see speed bump as an issue because the roads are kind of bad anyway. So if it's going to ruin the road on one side or ruin the road on the other side, I'm pro speed bump. What's going to happen? Not necessarily is it going to be a kid that gets ran over, but it could be a car rollover. Somebody's playing ball, the ball goes out in the street, car swerves, ends up in a house. I would rather put a little bit more money into the street from a speed bump than having to figure out, oh my God, I didn't do anything about it. Now we're reactive. And there's people that died inside that house because we didn't do anything about it as a city. So, speed bumps have pros and cons. Rumble strips have pros and cons. They're loud. So, that's an issue that I've been wishing that we could be able to fix for years.
Nobody speeds on Don Diego.
Anyone else with a question? Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Jody Skelton. I'm one of the admins of the Rio Communities Crime Watch here in our community. We have over 1,000 members in our group. Our crime problem here is out of this world. People are going up, stealing everything they can get out of the front yard, backyard, inside people's homes. I know people who have had home invasions. I know people who have had almost home invasions in this community. Personally, I would rather pay $150 or $200 more a year in my taxes and have a police department that we could depend on here in our community than have to replace everything you put out in your yard, your car, your kids' bikes, all of that kind of stuff. I would rather pay extra in taxes. I would like to see what your views are on that.
I agree with her. I would happily pay $200 more per year, maybe not as taxes that is administered by Valencia County, but even if it's through some special assessment, that would be money well spent. So I agree with you.
As do I.
I think all of us agree with you on that one.
Absolutely.
I'm totally for having more police. Never been against it. One of the things we have to think about is even with a fully funded police department, you're still going to have some crime, but it definitely helps to have more presence in the community. Just like you're saying, I think it's a good idea for people to consider when you look at having the lowest property taxes out of every municipality in the county. At some point, if your want so great and you're willing to pay for it, I think it's something that the voters should be willing to decide. Possibly have a special election specifically for public safety.
Something that I don't understand, if I can take 2 turns here, is across America, a lot of cities are doing the defund the police, and policemen are quitting, walking off the job. I don't understand why we're having a hard time hiring law enforcement. I would think that if we had an aggressive marketing campaign, we would be able to hire some of those people away from New Jersey, one. All these other places that are kicking their cops out, we should welcome them with open arms here to live in our community.
So the biggest issue, real quick, with police leaving our state has been qualified immunity. When that got taken away, that's when you started seeing the number of officers leave in droves. Anyone who was close to retirement or past retirement said, okay, we're done. We're moving to other states, Arizona, Texas, places where they still have qualified immunity. So the folks that are willing to stay, they're very dedicated to their community. Then it's going to become an issue of how much are we willing to pay to keep those individuals, because they're going to look for the best deal for them and their family.
Legislation.
You're in a church. You have just witnessed a miracle. All these gentlemen agree. Do we have any other questions? Yes, ma'am. Would you please come up to the microphone so we can hear your question? I think you'll need to step up, ma'am.
Evening. My question is, my name is Chris Montgomery, live on Star Drive, east side of Rio Communities. And what are your thoughts about the illegal dumping problem that we have here? Because I feel like that really signals that this is a lawless place and no one's watching, criminals can come in. So I think that the illegal dumping as well as the vacant buildings really contributes to the.
Be happy to answer that.
Yes, sir.
Thanks, Chris. I'd have to agree, and it's a real problem. I think it's a problem that has to be handled immediately, and whether it takes, another course of action with our waste management folks or another company that handles that sort of thing that can go out and handle that illegal dumping immediately. But I think that once these people that are dumping realize that we're not tolerating it and that we're going to handle it immediately. I remember back years ago in the city of Albuquerque when Mayor Chavez was mayor, he handled the graffiti problem the same way. There was no graffiti tolerated. As soon as a graffiti issue was observed, they handled it immediately and they took care of it. So I think we need to do the same thing with illegal dumping. We need to take care of it right away. Shouldn't be tolerated at all. So let's find the funding to take care of it. But yeah, it's a big problem. And it does attract more crime.
Yes, Mr. Gordon, your hand was up.
Yes, you're absolutely right. One of the things that the city is doing now, third Saturday, they actually have a cleanup. They have the two big giant dumpsters in front of City Hall, where people can bring all their garbage and throw it in there. When they're short, I actually volunteer to help them out also. I mean, we're all out there just trying to keep our city clean. John and I are on planning and zoning. We are actually in the process of trying to address the vacant houses now. So it comes with priorities on the things that we're doing, and we're trying to work to get into that issue as we speak.
So our city council approached planning and zoning and asked us for guidance on a trash ordinance. And the two big questions we were asked to answer is, should it be mandatory, and would it be single hauler or multiple hauler? Well, being basically libertarian-minded, my philosophy is, I don't think that the government, any government, should tell somebody what they have to buy and who they have to buy it. I was thinking Obamacare. So in our committee meetings, I was the kind of holdout who said, I don't like this. I don't like the rules that would mandate, tell us that we have to do certain business with a particular garbage hauler. After spending many Saturdays out there with Lawrence hauling garbage out of people's station wagons and trunks and driving it around on the mesa, going through the garbage out there looking to find a return address or a bill or a letter or figure out who it was that provided that. Eventually came back to planning and zoning and said, okay, I changed my mind. Single hauler, mandatory. If everybody is required to purchase garbage pickup, maybe that will de-incentivize them to, I mean, they're going to pay for it anyway. Might as well dump it in their own front yard instead of out on our mesa. It hasn't solved the problem. I hope it's made it less bad, but it's one small step. So other than that, the best thing to do is go out there and go through the garbage and try to figure out who did it. It's not a pleasant task.
I was the first code enforcement officer for the city way back in the day. And I used to go dig through trash when I found it dumped, pull letters, and I would track it back to the people that actually dumped it. So it's pretty interesting because some of the people that were actually doing the dumping were paying somebody else to come and pick up their trash and dump it where it was supposed to go. So some of the people in Berlin, they were paying some guy to come to their house, get their trash. And that guy was coming up here to Rio Communities because we have so many dumping spots that should be closed off by now, but they're not, that they were just dumping their trash there. Back in that day, we had a judge, but we didn't have a courtroom, so we didn't really have any teeth to stand by any of the stuff, which we should be able to do it now. Anytime that we see somebody, I live on Hillendale, as I said before, I had a friend of mine that lived all the way up at the end, and he used to watch for dumpers up there. And every time that somebody would go in there with their pickup truck full of garbage, he would call me and say, hey, let's get up here. And we used to run these guys down. I mean, there was people going up there with U-Haul trucks and dumping furniture and stuff out there in that holding pond or whatever you want to call it. And there's a big old sign that says no dumping. But, you know, signs don't do anything when people want to dump stuff. You know, I've had stuff from 10 miles down the road that people just came over and dumped it in our city. And if you drive into their little area, I don't know why they did, because there's stuff everywhere already. They could have just left it out there. You know, we have trash haulers, and the majority of people that I know that live around this community, they use their trash cans. You know, it's really against code to hoard your trash. So, you know, I'm with you. If I see somebody dumping, I'm gonna say something about it, chase them down, or to bring these people to justice, because it is against the law.
One of the main things has been, just as I said, most of the illegal dumping is from outside the community. We do have a handful of people in the community that currently don't have trash service for various reasons. The vast majority do. They use it. It's been very successful. Code enforcement and police have busted people literally dumping it out of their truck or driving back there, and it's amazing how, you know, the truck just turns around and goes someplace else, and they're still going to dump. They're just going to go someplace that someone doesn't see them. A lot of this is now happening at night. Find a dirt road, they don't care where it goes. They don't care if it's in a municipality, the county. It's in the middle of nowhere as far as they're concerned. No one's ever going to see it. And all of a sudden, a boat shows up in the desert, 30 mattresses, or whatever the case happens to be. You know, the biggest issue is how do we stop it? The one true issue we have is, you know, limiting access back to those areas. We're really limited because one of those roads is a public road. DOT will not allow us to close down that road. DOT is not going to let us put up Jersey barriers along state highways to prevent access to private property. So you have to kind of start leaning towards the private property owners as well to start posting signs that says, hey, no illegal dumping. At the same time, if those property owners are allowing it to happen, they're kind of responsible to a certain extent. Anything we can do to have more code enforcement makes a world of difference. We want to have a clean community.
Yes, ma'am, I believe we have another question.
My name is Kathy Cordova, and we live over on Moraga Street. I have two questions in two different areas. One is in parks in our area, and then the other one is economic. So, thank you. The question about parks is that when our two children were living in our home, now they've grown up, they're adults, and they've moved away. But when they were growing up with us, they would go over to the Timon Park. And at that time, it was beautiful grassy land. There was even a gazebo there. There was an area, a handball court that they used to play tennis. There was a basketball court there. And now it's been leveled. And it was going to be developed into something that hasn't happened. But anyway, that was a private situation, I understand. But I'm wondering if that's going to be redeveloped, because it's certainly an eyesore the way it is right now for any economic development. And as my son said when he returned one time, one of the holidays we have him come for, he said, where do the children play now? And I could not answer that question, other than at their homes or backyards, or maybe the street in front of their house on skateboards. But, we don't have a place that's really designated that I'm aware of. And I know there's been discussion about parks and developing parks in the community. But I'm not sure where you're going to do it, if you're going to redevelop a park that kind of was destroyed, but it's still there, it's vacant, or if you're going to find new land in the middle of the area, or if you're going to go over to Kagan Park. I don't know. But that's a question I have about parks. Do you want me to follow with the economic development?
Let's take one at a time.
Okay.
There's just the question on the parks. Yes, Mr. Mayor?
So regarding the former parks, Timon and Del Fuego over on Kagan Loop, you're right, they were both beautiful parks. They were maintained by VIA through assessments. When the assessments ran out, unfortunately, so did maintenance to maintain the parks. Those were sold by VIA to a private individual, and through various reasons, they're in the state they are currently. They are currently up for sale, but they're zoned as open space, so it means they're zoned either as a park or what they are now, nothing. So there's not a whole lot of value to those two properties. The good news is we did pass our Master Parks and Trails Plan back in June. That identified 9 potential sites, including the 2 former park properties within the city that we could develop as parks. We also received $250,000 from ICIP, so that's a legislative appropriation. So that $250,000 we can use towards purchasing a property and begin development. We're also working on grants as far as playground. There's some playground equipment companies out there that will match you dollar for dollar on your playground equipment. We also know that parks are going to be a multi-phase project. It's not going to happen overnight. We'd like to have 2 or 3 good-sized parks for the community to use for events, whether it's a trunk or treat type of thing, a farmer's market, maybe schools. They want to take kids over for an event, or sports teams, anything like that, or just for the community to get out there, have rent it out for a barbecue with a pavilion or something. So there's lots of good ideas. We're just at the point right now, identifying a potential property and moving forward.
And then the other question with
Excuse me,
economic development.
let me check and see if there's, anybody else
Oh,
want to
sorry.
address that question?
Lawrence and I serve on the Parks Committee, and our committee head is here tonight, Jim Winters. So we've worked for, I don't know, it seems like a year, putting together this park survey. And the number one, the Tinneman Park is on the list, but it's probably like in 9th place. There's other locations that are more suitable. I think the number one spot we selected was close to City Hall, behind the old coffee shop. It's on the main road. It's the first thing you see when you come into Rio Communities, and that would be developed, as the mayor was saying, kite flying contest, old car shows, whatever. It's visible. It's right on the main street, and it's available for purchase. The number 2 on our list is behind City Hall. The intent would be to develop that as some sort of athletic, something for kids to do. Basketball courts, racquetball, some activity thing between City Hall and 304. So those are the next 2 priorities, but as the mayor said, it's going to be a phased thing.
Me personally, I would like to see the old parks restored. I'd like to do a study on how many kids live in what area before we decide where we're going to build a park. Right now, everything's consolidated around City Hall. I don't want any kids in my neighborhood running across Highway 47 to go to a park. Kids go to parks. Sometimes we take our children to parks, or we take our grandchildren to parks. I don't really want to hang out at City Hall all day with my kids at the park. I'd rather be away from work or away from stuff like that, or city government, or whatever it is, to be somewhere that you're comfortable with, that you don't have all the traffic. Over there by City Hall, you have traffic going up 47 and 304. So those 2 properties, they've always been in my heart since I've been here. I don't want to say why one got tore down, but I would like to see something developed for kids on both sides of the street, not just one.
Anyone else on this particular question? Yes, sir.
As a child, I was fortunate that I grew up in a neighborhood where we had a park right across the street. So, and my brother and I spent all kinds of time at that park, playing basketball games, pickup games, football games, just the neighborhood kids getting together to play. And I don't even want to think about what it would be like if I hadn't had that park to play in as a kid. So I'm all for parks. I think it's really necessary. And anything that we can do to find the means to bring these parks, the existing ones, back to life, or create new parks, I'm all for.
Parks are important. Kids need places to play. The adults, all the parents, they like to know that their kids are somewhere safe. Getting parks are important for the town because we're in a flux. We're retirement and we're family. We need places for the family to have their kids, even if it's just a picnic or they go outside and play basketball, play tag. You have to have parks in town to make things happen. That's the future of our growth.
Yes, ma'am. Would you like to address your second question while we have some time?
Well, the second question about economic development, yes. When you talk about different sectors in our county that could be focused on, economic development, I like to think of it also as more of a collaborative situation where you have an agricultural sector, but what it needs is perhaps to have the next step of manufacturing. In other words, you take the fields of agriculture, food, and you add to that the group that would be having factories to value add that, so you have a nut crop, for example. Instead of selling it as a raw product out of state, keep it here, have your manufacturing plant here, and make pecan pies, for example. Do you understand? Okay, I wasn't sure if I was clear. That would be just one example. But you also have fruits, you have other crops that aren't agronomic necessarily, in this picture. What I'm thinking is you could have these facilities that you look at south of us in the industrial park, and you could have them become things like cold storage for fruits that you send many directions. You could, and connect also, say, to warehouses that are food service up in Albuquerque. So you have them here, but you can also, if you were able to have enough manufacturing here, then you could actually reuse the old Solo Cup, for example.
Yes, ma'am. Could you pose them the question at this time? Just give them the question.
So the question is, would you look at value-added manufacturing kinds of businesses to come here rather than just those businesses such as grocery stores that are going to be dependent on the house count here? If you were able to get manufacturing companies, those kinds of businesses here, then I think you're going to grow in a different way. You're not going to just be having the retail type businesses. You're going to have more of the wholesale. You're going to have more diversity in the businesses you're attracting here. And I think we're overlooking the fact that we do have quite a lot of raw materials that are produced here, and we're not finishing them off. Okay? So, your thoughts on
Yes, sir.
that?
I think manufacturing is very important. We have a lot of people that would rather be here than go up to Albuquerque, out to Los Lunas to work. So if we can find things, if Mr. Mims could actually bring manufacturing into town, or we can find someone that's willing to build here, I think it's a great idea. Because once you start getting the manufacturing here, then we can get other businesses here. Get more people to move into town. All that together is our growth and a successful town. You're welcome.
Not to rain on your parade, but I see a distinction, a dividing line between administrative purposes of a city and the entrepreneurship of opening a business. What we can do is be business friendly, and we can quickly process, eliminate red tape and approve permits and so forth. But it's not a city function to open manufacturing plants and do a lot of those things that you described, which would be great. But in our community, we really don't have an agricultural zone, and the industrial park, the old Solo Cup, Ketter manufacturing is next to the city, but it's not in our city limits. I would love to see it annexed. It might provide a nice tax base for us. But the best we can do is that our Economic Development Committee is encourage, basically sell the community. But it's up to the individual investors and the risk takers to decide they want to risk their investment and risk capital and open here.
Mr. Mayor.
Agree to a certain extent. We as a municipality, a government, we don't want to get involved in manufacturing per se, but we can provide incentives for manufacturers and investment groups. And just as said, we don't have an agricultural area in our current municipal boundaries, but that doesn't mean that we couldn't have a processing center within the city for something like that. Just as said, for some sort of food product. Possibly one of the biggest things that's happening right now is hemp oil, CBD oils from hemp. A lot of manufacturers in South Dakota found out really quick that when the hail comes and the storms come in South Dakota, your crop is ruined for the whole year. There are 15 varieties of hemp plant that grows within New Mexico very well, according to the various region and the soil. CBD oils currently go out of state for processing. That's something that potentially could be, we could look at having manufacturing within the city or just outside the city. It'd be great to have people who live and work within the same community, or they're not having to drive 45 minutes to an hour and a half each way just to provide a living for their family. So if we'd have something that keeps people here, broaden the business base, broaden out the employment options, it's going to help the community overall. We currently don't receive a lot of GRT from anything like that. And even if it was in the city, most of our tax base would come in the form of property.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I think it's a great idea to look for synergies within different industries where it makes sense. You mentioned pecans. Maybe if we, had a pecan facility here, would process the pecans, maybe even make food products out of those pecans. It's a great idea. But there again, as John mentioned, it's private industry. So we can talk about it and we can encourage those types of businesses to locate here and possibly think about looking for where those synergies could happen and encourage them. But at the end of the day, it's private industry. I think all of us would like to attract good business to our community. So, we want to be careful in terms of the type of business we want to attract. But wherever we can find those synergies, if they exist, I'm all for it.
This isn't a city thing, but a federal thing. We're classified as an enterprise zone at the federal level. So there's certain tax advantages that an entrepreneur would receive if they open a business or a manufacturing plant here. So one thing that we could be better at is advertising that we're at an enterprise zone. And that might encourage people.
Anyone else?
I agree with all of them.
Great. That's two miracles tonight. That's great. Yes, if you can just pose it as a question, we'll take a couple of quick. These will be the last. Are you the two? We'll take these last two questions here. Thank you.
I'm Leslie Helgeson. I live over on Frederico, and I'm glad we're having this forum. My question is really about code enforcement. I'm all about beautification. I like to pick up trash every day, walking my dog. And is there going to be a strengthening of code enforcement? Because I'm really getting tired of seeing more than 6 cars parked in certain driveways, if you know what I mean. And I'm not trying to point out anyone in particular, but there are places where, the weeds are out of control or the house is empty and so forth. So I'm curious, are we going to see real enforcement? And I know, Mr. Henderson, you were involved with that.
I'm really heavy on code enforcement, but I do think that sometimes we have to pick and choose our battles. We do have some people that their yard is totally impeccable, and they might have one little tiny thing out of sorts, and they end up picking up a citation for it. I kind of have a little bit of an issue like that because the person right next door to them might have weeds that are 6 foot tall. So, let's take care of the big stuff, and I call that big, the junkyards that we have that have accumulated more than 6 cars. There's a couple in my neighborhood over there that they're just unreal. Let's take care of that stuff first, and then we can take care of the other. Now, the thing about the cars is that as long as those cars are registered and they're not parked on the dirt, I believe there's something with how much parking you have at your house or something like that in there. I haven't kept up on it too much, but I'm ready to get back into it.
Yeah, it's kind of like up there with dogs. I mean, how many dogs are you allowed to have in your yard? That kind of thing, yeah.
Yes,
And I would like to see a strengthening. That's what I want.
absolutely.
Anyone else want to address that? Yes, sir. Mr. Rutherford.
I'm all about code enforcement, and as I said in the beginning, first impressions are 90%. If we really want to attract new business to the community, what are people going to see when they first come to our city? When they come through that big intersection, they enter our city. Are they impressed? Do they like what they see? Or are they discouraged? And that goes for businesses too. So whether you want to move here and you want to attract developers to come and build more homes, or you want businesses to locate here, first impressions mean a lot. So strengthening our code enforcement through our neighborhoods and business districts is important, and I agree.
Thank you, sir.
More
Thank you,
on
sir.
that area.
Yes, Mr. Gordon.
Yes, we just recently got a new code enforcer. So once he gets up to speed, he'll be able to go out there and hit the cars, hit the high weeds. Everything is going to be done in sections, so it gives us time to thoroughly hit an area and then move on to another section. It just takes time for him to know everything he has to hit and then start hitting it. But he's on it. I've seen him riding the streets looking for things. I live on Lee Trevino. I've seen him ride by.
The only thing I was going to add to that real quick is, yes, the code enforcer did start approximately a month ago. The other thing is he's also part-time. We would love to have full-time code enforcement, if possible, have 2 or 3 code enforcement officers, because it is a very large area. We're talking over 40 residential miles, street paved and unpaved, 2,000 homes, so it's a lot to take.
So I live on the corner of Boros and Palmer, and I encourage all of you to drive by my house. I think I've got a clean yard. I don't have any weeds, my grass is mowed, my trim is painted, and yet, Richard said, I got a ticket last month. So the first thing I did was just complied, but it taught me that something we need to look at is equitable enforcement. How can, anyway, I guess I deserve the ticket, but boy, there's a whole lot of people who, anyway, without getting personal here, we need fair enforcement of our ordinances.
Anyone else? Okay, we have time for one more question, if we would please.
I'm Claudine Montano, and I've lived in the community for 30 years, same house. My question is, I'm going to make it short and sweet. What are you all going to do about the livestock in the community? I think we live in the city, not farm.
Yes, sir, Mr. Gordon.
Well, John and I.
John and I.
Exactly.
John and I.
Everyone got that survey, that questionnaire? We are the ones who stuffed the envelopes. We sent it out, over 2,100? 2,100 envelopes we sent out. We got back 200. That was $1 total, 250. How much?
You'll get another one.
208.
You'll get another
Okay.
one shortly. I just got mine in the mail.
So what I'm trying to say is that we can put it out there, and we're going to work on what we received. But if the residents don't respond, how can we make a sound decision? So now that means that 10% is going to speak for the 90. We need cooperation from the residents to do the best that we can. Now, as far as the animals, yes, we're in a city. But if that 10% says that we're not, who are we supposed to respond to? So me personally, I sent mine in. I said dogs and cats. But I can't speak for everybody. We need everyone to speak.
Yes, sir.
I'm one of the 208 responses you got in. As a previous horse owner, there was a time on my 3-acre lot that I had up to 6 horses. Any person that has animals, whether they're horses, dogs, cats, we all have to be responsible pet owners. That means cleaning up after, making sure they're not causing a nuisance, etc. Since our city is growing and we are a city now, some of these properties may have been grandfathered in. Maybe they're sitting on an acre lot that at the time was zoned for a horse or 2 goats or whatever the case may be. So I think we need to look at that. Eventually, all of that's going to go away because the ordinance will be forced to change sooner or later. How we go about it is the issue. I can tell you that growing up in Las Cruces, the area that I used to hunt jackrabbits is now full of houses. I can't go jackrabbit hunting there anymore. Okay, so maybe there's a time where you won't be able to have a horse in Rio Communities any longer. But that's going to probably require an ordinance change. But in the meantime, I think we all have to be responsible pet owners. Let's do what's right. Let's think about our neighbor and do the right thing. But let's take a look at it because it is an issue.
So City Council asked Planning and Zoning to come up with an ordinance. And we started with the survey. And the questions that I've been asking people is, did you move to Rio Communities because you want to live in a city? Or did you move out here because you want to live in the country? And I've been hearing both sides. So rather than us issue some edict, we really want to know what the community thinks and respond according to the population. And so we have 208 or so surveys up and sort out. So I don't know how it's going.
Anyone else?
I think you should go to the county and pull up the covenants of the area before we became a city and see exactly what the covenants of the area says, because they're still down there. Right now, if somebody has a horse or they have a cow or something in their backyard, or if you're going to be a real happy resident of Rio Communities and have a pig farm moving next to you, it could happen depending on how they decide they want to write the code. If you pull that covenants up, it actually states what you can and cannot have up here in this area. So I think the best bet would be to go to the county, pull the covenants, and just write the code according to the covenants, the way that it was, the way that this area up here was perceived in the first place as being, as basically a city and not a farm. I mean, well, it wasn't a city until we made it one, but it's not farmland. I believe Valencia County says that you need 100 square foot for a horse. That's a 10 by 10 area. If you go a little bit further south, I believe they're requiring 10 acres for a horse. And we'll allow them in our neighborhood. So, you know, this is something that's been long overdue, and it needs to be fixed. And if only 10% of the people, or 200 people, say something, that don't necessarily mean to me that the other 5,000 people don't care. So I'm not going to take the word of 200 people over the word of another 4,900 people that live here. So I know people don't like to get involved, and some of them are fine with the status quo. So sometimes we have to look at both sides of it, even though those people don't really have a voice.
Thank you.
I was just going to say regarding the covenants, you're right. You know, there are covenants that are tied to the properties. Those are re-upped by VIA, and those are good till 2099. I think most of us probably won't be here at that point, including myself, but could be wrong. You know, when we look at those covenants, you know, the biggest thing we have to think about is there's multiple sets of covenants for each neighborhood. So the covenants that I have where I live are going to be different from Mr. Thompson. They're going to be different from Mr. Henderson and everyone else, and everyone in this room, you know, unless we live right next to each other. Our covenants are going to be separate. So, you know, we have those issues. We also have to think, you know, when we're looking at this ordinance, we're calling it animal welfare. We're considering the welfare of the animals themselves. You know, is it fair to stick a large livestock animal onto a property that's less than a quarter acre, and in that quarter acre it has a 10 by 10 pen, and it's there all day long? No, it's not. It's not fair to that animal. And then you have to consider, you know, your neighbors. Even if you keep that animal well cleaned up after, every single day, you're still going to have a smell, you're still going to have flies. I don't know about you guys, but this past summer, flies were horrible, and none of my neighbors have livestock. It was horrible. So I can only imagine, you know, if you had to live next to something like that, how bad the flies would be pretty much constantly year-round. But it's something that we're looking at. We have to consider the fact that, you know, when people say that our community's rural, it's really not. It was planned development community. It's been housing from the beginning. It had commercial zones already laid out. We pretty much stuck with that when we formed the city. We have to decide as a community, what do we want to have? Now, of course, you know, the survey kind of tells the P&Z and when they move forward to city council what they want to do, but there's going to be hearings for people to come out, because I'm sure, you know, it's going to be a hot button issue. You're going to have people that think they should have a farm. You're going to have people that think you shouldn't even have, you know, a cat. It's just, you know, it's going to be all over the place. But we have to come together and form some sort of rules for for the community overall.
Thank you. Thank you all for the questions. I don't know about you, but it's been very informative for me to hear your questions and to hear the answers given by the candidates. We are running right on, pretty much on schedule right now, and so we are going to let our candidates before we dismiss. And by the way, afterward, you can probably be easiest to go around through the hallway here and around. We have some refreshments and some goodies for you, and please avail yourself to them, because if not, next time you see me, I will weigh 335 pounds. But the fact of the matter is that we have really been... I want to say something before they give their closing remarks, and I'll make it short. I used to live here in Rio Communities and lived for a while. My father ended up giving deeding land to myself and my two brothers, and so we all lived out there in what's now known south of town as the Carbajal compound. I want to just say to you, seeing all of you here tonight, so many that it turned out, really it is. It's a great turnout. Hearing all of these gentlemen up here, you've got a tough choice. But I will say this community is very blessed to have a tough choice. Obviously, there are people here, both sitting out here and sitting up here, who truly, truly care about this community. You could be anywhere else tonight, but you're here. And I'm sure there were others that would like to be here. And that's why we made it available on Facebook, and I'll let you know pretty soon how to get a hold of that, and on YouTube as well. But I think that I really believe that the city of Rio Communities is an exceedingly blessed city. And again, so very thankful to you, gentlemen, as you give your closing remarks, for your willingness to serve, and for your ideas, and for your just the commitment that you obviously have to your city and to the people of whom are represented here by those sitting out here. Thank you very much, and I want to thank all of you for being here this evening. This has been a real, for me, eye-opening, interesting, and encouraging time listening to the wisdom and the thoughts that all of you have brought forth. And that's why I'm sorry, I'm bubbling over. Your city is blessed. And there's no other way to say that. So we're going to give 2 minutes closing remarks by each of the candidates that are up here. And we're going to start with Mayor Ramsell.
First, I just want to say thank you for everyone who came out tonight, those who live here, those that don't, people that couldn't come. Thank you for watching online. Thank you to the church here for hosting this event. I'm always impressed the way you guys handle it, very professional. I just want to say thank you for people who continue to live here and want to see the future of this community grow. They want to see the change happen. I know we have such potential. Potential is limitless. The amount of space that we have, the people that are here, you guys are the people that are going to see things change. People that are going to come here are going to want your business. They want you to stay here. We want you to stay. I want things to be good for my family, for my small kids, for your friends, your neighbors. But it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take time. Every day, we're working hard to make sure it gets better. I don't know when it's going to happen for everything. I just don't know. But I know together, whoever wins on city council, I believe that they're going to work hard. I know that I'm going to work very hard for you individuals every single day that I can to make things better in your life and for the community overall. I know I'm the only one on the ballot, but get out there and vote for everyone that you choose. Thank you.
Mr. Henderson.
I want to thank everybody just like the mayor did. Just a little bit about me. I have over 27 years of law enforcement experience. I did 23 years in the prison, not as an inmate, but as a captain. I did internal affairs. I was the head of the gang task force. Right now, I'm a director of public safety for the largest balloon fiesta in the world. I was the first code enforcement officer here. I have a lot of background, a lot of really strange history. I was brought up in the military family. I have 2 kids that are in the military, and I'm here to work for you. So if you have any questions, you can holler at me when you see me in Walmart, walking down the street. Most of the time I'm playing around in the front yard, watching for people dumping stuff, or hoping the code enforcement will drive by my house so I can stop them and say, hey, what about that guy? Because I don't really like to rat people out, but I will. It don't really make a difference anymore. I want the city clean. I think that if we have a clean city, we're going to have a healthy city. And that's kind of what my premise is. And thank you.
Mr. Thompson.
So I retired from the Marine Corps and from Edward Jones, and my wife and I discussed where we wanted to live. And of all the 50 states, we picked New Mexico. And then in New Mexico, we narrowed it down to Rio Communities. And this is where we planted our flag and purchased property and made our new homestead. So this is the land that we're fighting for. So my family consists of a wife, daughter, and myself, and I refer to us as the 3 peas in the pod. So let me tell you about my other 3 peas in the pod. Police, parks, and potholes. If elected to city council, those are the 3 areas that I want to focus the preponderance of my effort. Law enforcement, improving our police and safety, parks, and making my brother lives on Don Diego. Every time I go see him, I end up getting a new friend at alignment. So those are where I want to focus my effort. So I ask for your support, elect John Thompson to city council.
Mr. Gordon.
In '06, I found that I didn't need to have a passport to come to New Mexico. Came here for the first time as a visit, and I fell in love with it. I was still working as a police officer, and by '08, I told my family on the East Coast this is where I was going to retire. I retired on April 1st of '16. October 6th of '16, I moved my motorcycles and my truck into my house. My family come out and visit. They love it. My family knows that this is where I'm going to be for the rest of my life. I love it here. I love this community. When I came in, I started going to the city council meetings because I want to know what's going on in the city I live in. Mayor Gwynn said, well, if you're so interested, why don't you join planning and zoning? I'm here. I love it here. I want to see it grow. I want only the best for this town, and I want to be part of that growth. So here I am, and I hope you vote for me.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Apodaca.
A year and a half ago, my best friend and soulmate and I moved to Rio Communities just a year and a half ago. And on one of our first days in the neighborhood, our neighbor, Rosie Root, was waiting at the end of our driveway, homemade cookies, and her dog. And since then, we have met the finest people in this city. This is a great city with fantastic folks. We have fallen in love with this city. And that's why I'm here and running, because I want to see this city continue. We have so much potential. This is a wonderful community, and I hate to hear when some great neighbor throws out the idea that maybe it's time to move. I don't like what I see. And in my knocking on doors the last couple of months and meeting with all of you fine folks and many others, I've heard this from time to time. These are professional people. These are the kind of people we want to attract and keep in our city, and they're thinking of moving. I don't want to hear that. We have great potential. We can move this city forward. I grew up years ago with a very strong work ethic, with God, family, and that's what I bring to the table. You can read my credentials on the back there, on the back of my palm card. To me, those are my what I bring to the city and what I offer. And I think my sales experience, as I mentioned before, I think I can really benefit the city by bringing and attracting new business to the city. But aside from that, it's where your heart is. And my heart is here with Rio Communities. I'm here to stay. And I've been in Valencia County for almost 30 years now, so I'm familiar with the county. But I love this city. So with that, thank you all for attending, and this has been a great experience for me since I've never run for an office before, but I look forward to the opportunity of serving all of you if elected. Thank you.
I am playing golf with him tomorrow, and it's going to be an interesting time in that cart, believe me. Why don't we all just give every one of these candidates up here a big round of applause for a job well done and their willingness to serve. I also want to give, once again, a sincere thanks to every one of you that are here and all of you that are watching online or will be watching online after this is over with. And I want to thank Ashley Crispell, who worked the computer for us, Leah, who did the Pledge of Allegiance. Hard for me to say this, but Frank Logan, the timekeeper, a man that does a lot of work for us and helps get whatever comes in here out to the world, literally. Joseph Moya working the camera back there. Thank you, Joseph. Jessica Corral is a moderator, and certainly my right-hand person and the one that's been a tremendous aid to me. And then I think the loveliest lady in the entire land is sitting back there, and she's the one who's done tremendous work in setting up, and that's my wife, Sandy Carville. I want to thank every one of you. Thank you. Don't forget to vote and encourage your fellow constituents to do likewise. The election date, I believe, is Tuesday, November the 2nd, and you are right now going to be dismissed for a brief time of reception, and you can meet the candidates, talk with each other. And I want to once again, thank you for being here this evening. May God bless you. God bless Rio Communities. And God bless, I think, the greatest country in the world right now, the United States of America. We say here, you're free indeed, you're loved, and you are dismissed. Thank you all for coming.